All right, so we're recording. Um, Again, welcome, Mike. We're really excited that you're here. So I am just going to get started with reading Mike's bio. So after 20 years as a tech veteran making seven-figure projects for Fortune 500 companies, one thing has troubled Mike. It was that he was the token blind guy all of the time. Knowing that the invaluable skills he developed because of his blindness were the key to his success, he could not understand why employment amongst blind and visually impaired individuals was so high. In his pursuit to reshape the prevailing stigmas and misconceptions surrounding blind and visually impaired professionals within corporate America, Mike undertook a transformative journey and started the Blind Institute of Technology. This is dedicated to challenging the stereotypes and fostering inclusivity for the BVI community within the professional realm. Through advocacy, education, and innovative initiatives, BIT strives to create more equitable and supportive landscapes, ultimately redefining the narrative around the capabilities and potential of BVI professionals in the workplace. Using some of the same skills that made him a success in IT, Mike has built partnerships and placed BVI and disabled professionals in Fortune 500 companies nationwide. Recognizing the further need to equip people with disabilities with marketable and current tech skills, Mike established the BIT Academy and forged a valuable partnership with Salesforce, making the BIT Academy the only national recognized registered apprenticeship program to include the BVI community in the country. In line with their dedication to leveling the playing field, individuals with disabilities require high-level certifications to compete effectively. That's why everything undertaken in the Academy is geared towards achieving this important objective, offering specialized courses in Salesforce administration and digital accessibility analysis. So Mike, if you want to come off mute, I'll shut off my video and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Melissa, Veronica, Fiona. I really appreciate it, and everybody that's on. I really appreciate it. I wasn't sure if you were reading the 3-page version of my bio or the shortened version. I'm glad it was more the shortened version. So I was like, "Uh-oh, we're going to be here for a minute." Really thrilled to be here with all of you tonight. Uh, as the bio stated, I my name is Mike Hess. I am uh, been legally blind or blind my entire life, and I'm in my 50s now, so it's been a minute. Actually, before I go on any further, Melissa, am I fairly centered on the screen? Am
Yes,
I
I have you as the you're the main person and then you can see the others up top.
okay? But I mean, from a camera, like, is my camera just
Oh,
facing?
oh, yes, yes, I apologize. Yes, you are.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. Um, so my journey kind of started way back. I always say like shortly after the Mayflower landed. Seems like now, when I was born, but I was born Northeast Ohio, right on Great Lake Erie, and the county that is farthest northeast of Ohio. So the next county over would be Erie, Pennsylvania. So far northeast Ohio is where I was born, and very small town in Ohio. And the in first grade was when they first were doing eye tests, and I went down to the nurse's office, and they stick your head in some kind of helmet is what I remember, and the nurse is like, "What's the color of the nearest balloon?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like, I had no idea. I'm like, "You tell me." And so they sent me to the nearest optometrist in this small town, and the equipment back then, again, we're a long time ago, 18th century it seems like, but in the 1970s, the equipment wasn't all that powerful in this small town in Ohio. And so the optometrist said, "Hey, your son's faking it. I don't see anything wrong with his eyes, so give him a placebo pair of glasses. Make sure he sits 6 feet away from the TV. And my mom really knew within hours or days that, that was that was wrong. It was BS. And so next town over, finally ended up at the Cleveland Clinic. They did some experimental procedures on me, literally putting me under anesthetics and pulling my eyeballs out and doing all kinds of stuff. And ultimately, after a few of those, Dr. Dong, I'll never forget, in the lobby of the Cleveland Clinic says to my mom, like, "Hey, your son's got the earliest onset of macular degeneration we've ever seen, and he'll be totally blind by the time he turns 18." The couple things, the diagnosis was incorrect, although it was a degenerative retinal condition. Ultimately, ended up being a cone rod dystrophy, which losing my central vision first, which is where all your acuity is. So that's why I couldn't tell the color of any balloon. I could tell that there were balloons, but I had no idea colors, because all of that information really comes from your central vision, not your peripheral vision. And then second, like I'll never forget like my mom's response, because I look up at her, I'm 7 years old, and I was like, I had never even heard of the word blind at that point. So I look up at my mom and I said, "Mom, what's blind?" And the strength and power only of a mom. I'm a father of three, and I don't think I could have that same strength. But the strength of a lioness, my mom says, it just means you're going to be special. And like my mom, she could have taken all kinds of routes, right? Like she could have freaked out, she could have done all kinds of things, and who knows how that could have changed, if anything, the trajectory of my life, of my understanding. But I just, other than other than eating a lot of carrots from that point, on, I was like, okay, well, so this is a thing. And but in small town Ohio, the school system, as soon as they found out that diagnosis, they wanted to push me off to school for the blind. And my mom says, "Oh, no, 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 you will integrate him." And depending on your zip code here in the United States, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever your pronouns may be, integration looks totally different, even for students with disabilities. And so I'm going to say they tried the best they could, um, for first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Like I think they were trying. I really do. So all the way through elementary school, then they got me large print books. They did some experimenting with putting like black paper on my desk, because my eyes were super sensitive to lights and the glare of lights off of the desks. And but ultimately, when my mom finally moved my brother and I out to the Denver metro area where I currently reside, we landed in an amazing school district. Which it was I was in eighth grade before I was exposed to Braille, assistive technology, CCTVs, or closed circuit TVs, large camera units connected to a television at the time. And I would have to zoom in at about 2024x, so really, really large print. But that's where my eyes had degenerated already by eighth grade to that level. So really massive print. White on black was my preferred kind of contrast at that point in time. And then I was also given white cane, or orientation mobility O&M training at that time. So I was in eighth grade, and by eighth grade, like I was wait, because you spend up until fourth grade, up until you're 10 years old, you learn how to read, and then you read to learn. And my reading, my spelling was atrocious at that time. But going through junior high and high school, I ended up with a couple of math and science teachers that would not let me schlep off whatsoever, and I was king of schlepping off. I promise you that. And but these math teachers, they saw that I could do stuff just kind of in my head, like it was just something that came fairly natural to me. And so they would not let me schlep off, and I kept working at that, which was great, because So I graduated high school reading probably at a sixth grade level, but my math was pretty advanced. And so graduated in 1990. And of course, July of 1990 is when the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, July of 90. And shortly after that, IBM, Big Blue, sent out grant dollars to a handful of community colleges across the country. And one of those community colleges just happened to be fortuitously located at the community college at Denver, downtown Denver. And I was taking some classes at a local community college. Wasn't community college at Denver at the time, but the access teacher, which every community college, every 2 and 4 year school has to have some kind of, they call it something different, but it's basically disability services for people with disabilities. And so my access teacher of that disability services program said, "Hey, Mike, do you want to go to this program? It's called Computer Training for People with Disabilities, and they'll teach you to be a computer programmer." And I'm like, "What is that?" And I had no idea what a programmer was at the time. And she was like, "Well, and again, this is you guys can read about it in history books. So way before Google Docs or way before Microsoft Word, there was a program called WordPerfect 5.1, WordPerfect in general. So again, you could read about it in history books. This is digital, history there." She goes, "Well, programmers, write programs like WordPerfect." And I'm like, "Oh," I said, "Well, how much did they make?" Because I was engaged um, to my current wife of almost 29 years, and she had two little girls. And so I was engaged to a ready made family. And of course, I was motivated by the Benjamins. I was motivated by money. I wanted to be able to support my ready made family. And so I said, "So how much does a computer programmer make?" And so again, this is how long ago this was, but she's like, "Oh, you're going to come out of this program making 25 or 30,000 a year." And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, whatever your pronouns may be, like you could actually rent an apartment and have money for food. Like that's how long ago this was, to say that you could make 25 or 30,000 a year, and you could actually again somewhat maintain a family. It's hard to believe that now in today's economic landscape, but back then, and so I was like, "Cool, sold, done." So applied for the program, and the program was essentially 56 credit hours in, because again, it was associated with a community college, so each course was an accredited class, and there was 56 credit hours in 3 semesters. So it was like taking a drink from a fire hydrant. Clearly more than full time, right? Full time is generally 12 credit hours, and this was well above that. Um, and it was a super intensive, but you walked away with a certificate in applications programming, and of course, you were just two classes away from getting an associate's degree. And but I was like, okay, but I didn't care about the associate's degree. I wanted the employment, and I was amazed at the time, like how many employers were actually knocking at the door of these graduates, and because at that time, so in the mid '90s, the first global technology bubble was being created. And it was being created due to a phenomena that was much to do about nothing, but it created a bunch of jobs called Y2K, or year 2000. For those of you not old enough to know what that was about, but it was, again, a big, basically, all these computer programs were written with 2-digit date fields. So literally, like, in the end date field was 99, right? Not thinking that the clock was going to turn to 2000. So literally, like, I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs were created globally because they needed people to change 2-digit date fields to 4-digit date fields. And that was the beginning of my tech career, was getting through this program. And at this, and again, this totally fits who I am. So at this halfway mark of this program, 6 months into the program, 13-month program, I was the furthest behind in class. I tell people all the time, I am not the sharpest tool, brightest bulb, whatever metaphor you want to use there. Like, I'm not that guy. I am one of the more stubbornly, I don't give up. I have a lot of tenacity when it comes to just attempting to figure stuff out. So but I ended the program with the I think it was a nice award. Like I was student of the year. And it had to do with my tenacity because things didn't always come natural to me. But again, I told you, like I finished high school reading at a sixth grade level. I was really far behind in a lot of topics, even though I got the concept of logic. I was behind on a lot of other subjects, and it took me a while. But um, 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week, like I don't give up. And so ended up with student of the year, ended up with multiple job offers, and that was my entree into tech. And started as a computer programmer, worked in all my career was always in private industry. Never worked public or nonprofit until the last 11 years. But the so mid 90s, I'm in private industry and I'm computer programming, and really enjoyed the puzzle of computer programming. But I was always frustrated with, like, okay, what's the bigger picture? Um, Never realizing, like, that's kind of how my brain, I I I probably have undiagnosed attention deficit disorder, because I which works really well as an entrepreneur, because I can work on multiple projects at the same time. But at the time, like, I was really good. Like, I could solve, for computer programs, no problem. Moved over to the network side of the house, which I thought was better because it was more macro, where computer programming can be very micro. And so, as a network engineer, it was a lot more macro, and that was like, oh, this is super cool. But then realized, like, I would get bored even at that level. And I'm like, yeah, but how does this all fit in from the business perspective? Like, we're making these decisions, for what business, like, what was the business model? And I was always frustrated with not knowing that. So I started asking for skip levels. And, before I knew it, I was, getting mentored by SVPs and CIOs and CTOs of organizations, Fortune 5, Fortune 600, C-suite individuals. And and then, as I was, like, again, as managing 7, 8 figure projects over my career, doing pretty well as a 6 figure engineer. And I don't say that from a braggadocious, but I promise you, the token blind person isn't getting paid 6 figures in private America if you're not delivering. It's all about delivering. It's all about production. And so I did that at a modestly high level. But again, I kept finding myself distracted with, like, yeah. And so I was always asking the larger macro kind of questions. And then I started thinking about, like, this is like the last 5 years of my 20-year career. I started thinking, why am I the only blind guy? um, and how come I've never bumped into anybody in a wheelchair, and I've never heard of somebody using sign language as their primary means of communication. At that time, neurodivergency wasn't even talked about. Like, clearly, there were people in tech that were neurodivergent. We just thought that they had odd behaviors, but within tech, that's par for the course. I mean, that's just there at the time there were a lot of odd behaviors in tech in general. Um, but I just started asking that question of, like, why am I the only blind person? So I started digging in, because I knew of, clearly I knew of all the, what I call the B's, right? American Foundation for the Blind, National Federation of the Blind, American Council for the Blind, National Industries for the Blind, World Services for the Blind, like all the B's. Like, there are all these blindness organizations that are out there um, that some do something with the blind, visually impaired community. And I started looking into them, and just said, well, okay, well, who's out there addressing this unemployment deficit, this unemployment, what I call epidemic, this unemployment epidemic for the blind, visually impaired. Like, who's addressing that? And they all had education, advocacy. Some, again, they're doing some sort of good for our community. Clearly, they're historic. But I couldn't find, somewhere on their website, there'd be, like, way down there, you know, 3 menus later, you'd find something about employment services. But they were all, kind of government programs and whatnot. And I'm like, well, like there's so many jobs in the Fortune 10,000. Like that's the economic vehicle, for America is, it's those big employers. I mean, they hire literally tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people every single year. And so who's going to that community to talk about this amazing community that again, for a huge portion of our population, the blind visually impaired population. I mean, we've got education. Some of us even got work history and all this other kind of stuff. Like who's out there like soliciting us as this, amazing untapped human resource potential? And so really couldn't find it. Actually wrote a business plan while I was still working. Actually pitched that business plan to the CIO of the organization I was actually with at the time, and his name was Mark. And Mark's like, Mike, this could be a really good moneymaker. He goes, and he actually proposed that I kick this off while I'm still working. And so that's kind of what I did in 2012. I was kicking this off. I started, poking around, asking a lot of questions, that sort of thing. And then finally I just realized like I'm not going to be able to like be productive with one foot here and one foot there. I know where my passion is. And so with the support of my best friend and better half, um, I left my six-figure income in the fourth quarter of 2012, September 21st to be exact. Today will live in my brain. Uh, and I left corporate America September 21st, 2012. Finished up like my business plan and all like I wanted to make sure I was doing everything as much as possible. I didn't get an MBA. I was watching some YouTube videos at the time on, how to kick things off. So I was trying to do everything as formal as possible. But my background was all tech and managing tech projects, very much project management, program management. Um, and submitted the paperwork February 28th of 2013. And that's when Blind Institute of Technology came to fruition. And what's unique about Blind Institute of Technology is our business model. And I wanted to create an environment that was focused on the unemployment epidemic. And so our business model is we act as a nonprofit staffing agency. So small brands like JP Morgan Chase, CVS, DaVita Healthcare, Allstate, Salesforce, they pay us to find them talent from the blind visually impaired community and the broader professionals with disabilities community to support their diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring initiatives, specifically for people with disabilities. And so statistically, so just like to understand like the challenge of that business model. So estimated 86% of the Fortune 10,000. So easy math, estimated 8,600 companies within the Fortune 10,000 have some sort of equity, inclusion, hiring initiatives. Okay. The big three initiatives are gender, ethnicity, and relationship orientation. All very important, right? Like we've done a lot of things well in the United States. Recognizing talent from marginalized communities is not one of them. I was raised by a single mom. We know like we just know the gap in gender pay, gender equity, people of color. So within the Fortune 500, individuals who identify as female that are in leadership, so vice president and above roles for Fortune 500 companies. Of all those individuals, only 4% are women of color. Okay, so again, like there's the statistics, like they tell a story. So these inclusion initiatives for again gender, ethnicity, and relationship orientation, super important. However, of the 86% or roughly 8,600, only 4% or estimated 344 of the 8,600 include a talent acquisition strategy that includes people with disabilities. So 344, not 300. So 344 companies of the Fortune 10,000. That's it. Include a talent acquisition inclusion strategy that includes our community. So that's what we're facing. Like those are the numbers, right? So Blind Institute of Technology, like our whole approach is, I speak corporate. I again did a lot of skip levels, didn't realize what those skip levels were going to do for me, but super comfortable talking to, CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, CIOs, CTOs, and those are the individuals that we go and court. We talk to you about this amazing untapped talent pool, with tenacity and resilience and um, stick to itness, and I won't speak for everybody here, but myself, I have a little chip on my shoulder. You know, I've been told you can't do it so many times. I've been told you shouldn't do it so many times, maybe for different reasons, but like it's so getting corporate America executives, to buy into like I call the blind visually impaired community the greatest untapped human potential on the planet, just based on numbers. Like there's a lot of validity to that statement. Um, and I feel like we bring a level of innovation, a level of just um, again stick to itness and just some resilience. Like we have to be resilient. So that was Blind Institute of Technology. But let me like so, so I had no idea. So that's like that was the grand scheme of things. But in the big picture, ladies and gentlemen, like I had no idea how to run an organization, and I still don't. I laugh because I'm like, do I really know how to run an organization? um, you could ask my team about that. I'm certainly obviously passionate and committed to this cause. We just celebrated our 11th birthday on February 28th, and we continue to move forward in super fun ways. We've gotten more than 300 jobs for individuals over the 11 years, which aren't staggering numbers, but the medium wage that we get people placed in is more than 60K. For individuals who have been in their employment for more than 5 years, they're making more than 140K. So those numbers tell a story themselves, right? Like, so our people that we're placing are getting promoted. They're adding value to organizations, and actually the average tenure for fully able-bodied people is like 4.2 years or something like that. And again, we've got a whole host of people that are 5 years plus now, 6 years plus. So again, that whole stick to itness, and they're getting recognized. More than 60% of the people that we've placed in full-time roles have been promoted at least one time. So again, super super proud of all of that, what we've done. um, 7 years ago, again, because I come from tech. And within tech is one of those like verticals, very much like financial services, where you either through certification stacking or within financial services, you can go through like getting licenses, that sort of thing. You don't need a traditional 4-year degree to be successful. Now it's helpful, but it's not necessary. Like you can absolutely just do what's called cert stacking or certification stacking and be just fine within tech. Actually, maybe even a little bit farther up the knowledge tree when it comes to certain technology stacks, Cisco, Salesforce, Google to a certain extent. So you can do really well within the technology world with doing cert stacking. And so um, I always wanted to like throw my name in the hat in the ring when it came to a workforce development initiative. And so 7 years ago, we were the first organization in the country, probably the world, but I'm going to stick with the country, in the universe. And so so we put 6 blind people and 1 neurodivergent individual through the Salesforce admin certification. Now, why Salesforce? Two primary reasons. One is Salesforce at the time was well on its way to being a global CRM leader. They've clearly surpassed that. CRM, sorry, customer relationship management, in typical tech fashion. I'll throw out 3-letter acronyms. Actually, in tech, we call them TLAs, 3-letter acronyms. So we have an acronym for acronyms, right? And so we threw out. So I always wanted to get a program going. Salesforce was a great choice because of its ubiquity. But second, in a like a best kept secret that we are trying to not make so secret, from a digital equity perspective, which is super important for any of you who are screen reader users only. Salesforce is the most digitally equitable business enterprise application on the planet. So what do I mean by that, Mike? Because I can use Microsoft Word, I can use Zoom, I can use Google Docs, like with a screen reader. So those are all B2C products, right? So business to consumer. And there's clearly been initiatives and money spent on making sure that products are accessible to people with disabilities, and all sorts of lawsuits, and the real famous one with Domino's, going all the way to Supreme Court. Like, so there's all kinds of legislation that supports like why that is of great importance. But Salesforce, from a B2B, so a business to business, the inner workings of Salesforce, not the user interface. Of course, that's accessible. It's the inner workings. How do you configure Salesforce? That's all done under the hood, behind the scenes, in what's called the business enterprise workforce development world. And so, at the time, 7 years ago, found out that Salesforce was remarkably accessible to screen reader users. And so that's why we picked Salesforce. But what we found out, like when we did find blockers, okay, from a screen reader perspective, I reached out to some folks internally who were still there at Salesforce and said, "Hey, we're having these issues." And I had no idea if they were going to be receptive. You know, why would they want to make these changes in the first place? Small, nonprofit program in Denver, Colorado. Who the heck are we? And found them to be receptive. They were like, "Oh, tell us more." And then the relationship with Salesforce just kicked off. I was amazed that they were listening. Not only were they listening and receptive, but then they started fixing it. And I'm like, holy buckets! Like we actually like, and that really got me thinking. Like, wow, man! We like we could really create a workforce that's just based on Salesforce alone, getting blind, visually impaired people leveled up in this Salesforce ecosystem, then get them jobs in this ecosystem where literally, like, I could use the phrase that Salesforce is the reasonable accommodation. Because out of all the inclusion communities, right, like again, gender, ethnicity, relationship orientation, our community, the people with disabilities, we're the only community, ladies and gentlemen, that has to ring the very legal bell called reasonable accommodation. And it's not due process. It's not like, oh, you're innocent until proven guilty. Oh, contraire bon frere. Like it's for real that you have to prove reasonable accommodation. It's up to you. It's not up to the company. And so to be able to go to these large companies and be able to say like, yeah, Salesforce has figured that out. Like it's just been an amazing door opener for us. But so I digress. So the 2017 was our first cohort. Um, Fast forward to 2020, Salesforce being uh, the progressive unicorn that they are. Again, this is going to stagger most of you here. They are the first tech company in the world to have a fully funded workforce development initiative for people with disabilities. Okay, what do I mean by that? So again, all these tech giants, they all have workforce development initiatives. Again, gender, ethnicity, relationship orientation, they all have them because trying to grow new talent, instead of just recycling the same Caucasian male straight individuals, right? Like you got to find talent in other talent pools. And so all these companies, AWS, Cisco, SAP, Oracle, Google, Microsoft, they've all got workforce development initiatives for these other marginalized communities. Salesforce is the only one that got a fully funded workforce development initiative for people with disabilities. Okay, it went into effect February 1st of 2020, because their fiscal year is Feb 1 to January 31. So um, something else happened in 2020, if you guys can remember, the pandemic. So as they're kicking off this new program, they started reaching out to nonprofits, across the country, like, hey, we got this workforce development. We're looking for partners. And of course, everybody was scrambling because of the pandemic. They interview BIT, they interview me first week of April 2020, and tell them like, yeah, our business model is employment. We're committed to the Salesforce training because we feel like it gives our candidates a leg up within this ecosystem. And it was the easiest 15-minute sales call I've ever been on. It was um, she her name is Sarah there at Salesforce says, she goes, all right, Mike, she goes, uh based on the fact that you're focused on employment and your program is already 100% remote, because you got to meet blind visually impaired people where they are, and you can't do that through brick and mortar. And so our training was already remote. Our training is focused on employment, not just certification. We became their official training provider in 2020. And Salesforce came to us, and this was, again, our business model is a nonprofit staffing agency. And in 2020, I was concerned that a small nonprofit wasn't going to make it, because I knew layoffs were going to be coming. Again, I speak corporate, so I know that was coming up with the pandemic, in full force, especially June, July of 2020. If you guys can remember some of those dark days, and Salesforce came to us with $100,000, and at that time, like, that was more funding than we had ever gotten. It was absolutely amazing, and it was a lifesaver for our program and for BIT. And since then, our program became an actual registered apprenticeship program for blind visually impaired people, which it's the only registered apprenticeship program for blind visually impaired that has nothing to do with digital accessibility, which is cool and sad all at the same time. And since then, our training program, we've been able to get totally blind people trained and certified in Salesforce on 4 continents: four: North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. We've gotten people from 6 continents. I don't think there are any blind people in Antarctica, so we're good there. We won't get all 7. Maybe someday, when it's not so cold. But for right now, it's still cold. So anyway, and that's truly been kind of my journey. My eyesight diminished precipitously in my late teens and 20s, is when I where I don't know if any of you have ever experienced where shadows went from, like, you could clearly tell that it was a shadow to it looks like an object. Um, that's when white cane travel was a you know like I didn't have to do it, to there was no way I could travel without it. um I still have light perception, which I feel super fortunate about. I have no usable functional vision. Haven't had that for decades. It's been a long time since I've had usable functional vision. And my I really do, like, I feel like that journey, and up there I call them blindisms, because some days things feel really dark and it has nothing to do with my blindness, and yet it has everything to do with my blindness, because I feel like um you know the the obstacles that we have to overcome as a community are for real, and they seem insurmountable, where employers, right, like, where we can't even earn we we can't even earn our own nickel and support our own family, because the perception and the stigma is so pervasive. It's so real, right? Like, the only time blind people make the news is like, oh, look, we climbed something, or we swam something, or we ran something. Like, there's all this, forgive the it's kind of a crude term, but I know it's pretty pervasive. It's inspiration porn. And Fiona was laughing because she knows, like, I'm like, yeah, I was like, I don't want to be used as inspiration porn. Like, that's not who I am. Like, I want true equity for our community, and true equity, like, it's employment. It's the ability for us to actually earn our own nickel. deliver at a high level and get promoted like other individuals. Like that's equity to me, right? To be able to purchase our own houses and buy our wives cars and take trips. I just got back from Mexico last week, and I was able to take my family and having an amazing trip. Like that's equity to me, right? Like not the fact like there's a picture of me right now out there on LinkedIn that is me, I'm looking at the ocean. Of course, I can't see the ocean, I can hear it. And that's what equity for me is about, is helping our community have those kind of opportunities. And the dark days are still like I still get down, because I don't have the same user experience in so many situations as my sighted peers do, as my fully able-bodied peers do. And so, more to come. And this, sight loss is a journey, and it's full of the peaks and valleys as we've all experienced. As I've tried to learn in my tenured state, another way of saying I'm an old guy, is I attempt to let the peaks not be so high and the valleys try not to be so low. And that really helps me kind of maintain my level of, you know, um, just kind of sanity and or anxiety around, the journey of sight loss, and, living in a world that clearly wasn't designed for the blind and visually impaired. So I'll stop there, Fiona, Veronica, Melissa. I'll stop there, and I'd love to field any questions that you might have. All questions for me, I promise you, are absolutely on the board. um, I'm happy to uh, talk about any topic that has interested you, anything that you would like to know that I didn't talk about, but I'm just super honored to be here in front of all of you. And if anybody has a question, now's a good time to ask it.
Thank you, Mike. This is Melissa. That was awesome, and it was great to hear you, tell your story. We do have some questions, and I can start with two of them, and then, as they might roll in, whether that's from the chat or from the Q&A function, um, we'll do those. But that's out to our audience. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. So our first one is from Fiona, and she wanted to know, have you seen more openness among companies to employ visually impaired people today versus 10 years ago?
Yes. Short answer is yes on that, Fiona. And quite honestly, it's because we have 800-pound gorillas. We have juggernauts, Fortune 100 company executives, from Salesforce, from Randstad, from um, uh, ServiceNow, I mean, it's Comcast. There are Fortune 100 executives that are absolutely committed to equity within the talent acquisition um, pipelines, to include people with disabilities. And now that, again, the awareness around, like tech being the great equalizer, the short answer is yes.
Awesome. And then kind of a follow-up from that, um, does BIT specifically do any follow-up with the employees that they employ? Specifically, as you said, a lot of companies are improving their equity and their accessibility, but have you had any situations where someone's gotten employed somewhere, and I hate to say it like this, but almost in quotes to kind of fill a quota, and then that place is not accessible to them? We're not making accommodations for them.
Again, short answer is yes, right? Like, so, um, I won't call out the specific companies by name, but so to think, okay, so like I can say like, okay, so Salesforce, right? Huge portions of Salesforce completely accessible. There are still gaps. Okay, so and we know that, let's say HRIS systems, like Workday, have done an admirable job getting better. Unfortunately, there are a lot of ecosystems inside of organizations, right? The internal side of making an organization run that companies have not paid attention to, and organizations, they haven't. They don't have a full, call it, accessibility audit on all of their internal systems. And so for some companies, right, you could say they bit off more they can chew. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, quite honestly. Let's say the sponsor or the executive that we had the relationship with, quite honestly, moved on, and their successor, right, was not as on board with this as the previous person, unfortunately. And that happens. We know the turnover of executives within Fortune blah 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 companies. And sometimes the success of these placements have been thwarted based on, quite honestly, just what happens, turnover, attrition, all that. That's that's private America. We all understand that.
Yeah. So Josh, I just,
Yeah,
uh,
that's fine.
yeah, if you want to just speak your question.
I almost wrote that too. So Mike, thank you for what you do. The first one's a little bit of a joke because I went into college computer engineering in 2000, and because of office space, left computer engineering very quickly because with my personality, I knew that was not something I could do for the rest of my life. But appreciative of what you do. I run the Dented Puck Foundation, and we support blind hockey in America.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I was actually in Toronto playing hockey this weekend in Canada. And speaking with the Canadians, a lot of what they've noticed, our community is kind of stuck on Facebook. The problem is now with all the bots and craziness on Facebook, we're really trying to start a community somewhere else. Um, do you have a suggestion of somewhere to go for app development that would be, like we're looking for an intra-community app. So really with us as the focus, um, and where we can, create everything so that we have the community there and and we don't have to worry about, is this app accessible? Is this app accessible? Which works for you? So we have that. Do you have a suggestion of where to go that is, the most philanthropic or will work with us?
Josh, can I think I do, but I want to make sure that I include um my team on that. Can I get back to you, Josh? Can we correspond via email?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and what
I'm sure one of these lovely ladies can connect us.
perfect.
I can
Yeah, and
definitely do
what
that.
I'll do is, and please know, like Veronica, Melissa, Fiona, like I'll make sure to share the answer with you so you can share it with the larger body too. So this, I'm not trying to be secretive or anything about this. I want to make sure I include what we'll call my younger team members who are that have their thumb on the pulse of all things social, much more than my tenured state, Josh.
Oh, trust me, I was one of those guys on Facebook with the I do have you, but I was one of those .edu emails in the Facebook history. So I am way past that app development social media phase too. I try, but I'm there. I'm a dinosaur in this age too.
Yeah, so I've got some thoughts, but I want to make sure I'm including my team, which are much more in the know. But happy to share that. And so please, ladies, please connect Josh and I.
Yeah, definitely.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Yep.
guys.
Yeah, of course. Looks like we have another question. Just give me a moment. Oh,
And Josh, just to let you know, I actually know some of the Dented Puck community members as well. I've been introduced, which is super fun. So love what you're doing, and yeah, great job.
Oh, that was the part of the text that I didn't read. I was like, yeah, but I know a bunch of my teammates are on Salesforce, including Drew. So, and
Oh,
and, and I've that's why I said when I was realized that's why I'm here, because I was like, I know exactly what you do, and I was like that, and I've learned so much about it. So yeah, thank
uh,
you.
thank you.
All right, next, William, if you'd like to come off mute and go ahead.
Thank you, Mike, for that talk. It was very interesting. I'm a blind nurse practitioner. I work in healthcare. Do you I noticed in my third career, and that I always have to make up things when I get to different places to work. Do you have any input or placements within the healthcare that with accessibility or?
Great question, William. And healthcare is one of those verticals. So, my biggest, like, we'll call it chip or play I have in healthcare is DaVita Healthcare.
Okay.
Okay. Which is very much, renal disease, right? So, kidney care, sort of thing. The CIO, Alan, is a dear friend of mine. And I have direct access, with him in healthcare. He is my biggest. Now, the good news is because I do have, again, this isn't braggadocio. I'm not saying this from braggadocio. I do have friends in pretty high places. I can get to leadership at KP. I can get to leadership in other healthcare ecosystems. But I mean, healthcare. You know this better than I do. Working there, it is a man. It's a tough environment, even if you're fully able-bodied. We have so currently, like I kid you not, individuals who have come to us. We have a full blown DO, full blown doctor, whose blindness kept him from getting through the boards. We have a pharmacist because again, blindness happens. It doesn't. You're not just always born with it. And she 15 years into her career, blindness happened, and couldn't work as a pharmacist anymore. So in the state services of Virginia said, "Oh, why don't you go to customer care?" Right? Because clearly, as you lose your eyesight, you lose your intelligence too. And
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm not happy to it.
yeah, but she's a big brain. She's a pharmacist. I mean, a pharmacist, and so she killed the Salesforce admin certification first attempt, and now she's killing it with us. And then a registered nurse, same thing, going on with her career, doing just fine. Again, big brain healthcare individuals that healthcare hasn't been the most supportive and or inviting for these individuals. So I'd love to give you better news than what I'm sharing. All I can do is say, like, I have DaVita Healthcare in my back pocket. If there's anything there at all, I can make introductions at the highest level for you there.
Because currently I work as a nurse practitioner in mental health, and wherever I go, I have to make things from scratch. And sometimes that's so time consuming when you have to see patients and then make up things along the way.
Yeah.
Good.
Happy to. So again, I'm happy to collaborate with you to give you, so again, we're like all about like, okay, how does our community not only gain employment, how do we maintain employment? And we have a lot of examples of making stuff accessible, at CVS and again, all these different companies. So I'm happy to collaborate with you, William, if you find any value in that.
Oh, that'd be great, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, please, ladies, if you could connect William and myself, like, part of what BIT, I call it the BIT family, and we put the fun and dysfunction. But part of our, like we want to make sure, like, how do we, help each other, again, maintain our employment. And there's no secret sauce to this. There's no IP. There's no intellectual property around this. It's like, so here's what we've done in these different systems, and like, how do we share that, right? And that's the family that we're trying to create.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You
Yeah,
betcha.
well, this is Melissa. I can definitely connect you two afterwards as well.
Thank you,
Thank
Melissa.
you.
Yeah, of course. So, We'll do one final question. It is just about 8:05, so I apologize for going a little bit over, but this should be a little bit short. So our final question is kind of a two-parter, so maybe cheating. But the first part is, does BIT help folks that are not in the state of Colorado? And then also if we want to find out some more information, how would we go about that?
Sure. Yeah, no, we've helped. We've helped people on 4 continents, so we are not restricted to the state of Colorado. um, and super fun fact, like I tell people this all the time, like the BIT family, they like we work with people from literally totally blind people from the Middle East, from Pakistan, Philippines, Russia. I mean, as politically different, as culturally different, as religiously different as you can imagine. And what's amazing about this community is that our lived experience, regardless of where we are, where we hang our hat, like our lived experience is so similar, so similar. Like our lived experience transcends political, cultural, religious constructs. It's so amazing to me. So yes, we work with individuals way outside of Colorado, and then quite honestly, our website we do our best to keep our website super accessible. And if you want to reach me, like I literally have my phone number and my email address on the website. Like I make myself ridiculously accessible. And so please feel free to reach out to me if you're looking for any of our services. It's become a career seeker. There's a link out there pretty much on every page. If you're interested in anything we're doing whatsoever, we don't charge for any of our services at all. So our services are completely complimentary. We make money by, again, we sell to JP Morgan Chase. We sell to, like, those organizations have plenty of money to support what we're doing. So I just want to again thank all of you, Melissa. Thank you, Fiona, Veronica. Veronica, I get to meet you in person next week.
Yes,
Really excited for
I
that.
am as well.
Yeah, I'll be in New York City with the kickoff with ServiceNow, another tech juggernaut that is absolutely investing in our community. It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you all. They asked me to keep it to 40 minutes, and I'm like, do you know me? There's no way I keep it to 40 minutes. So thank you all for your patience. It's truly a pleasure. We need to stay together. We need to stick together. We need to, with organizations like FFB, BIT, like we need to collaborate. We need to hold hands and just realize, like, this is a journey, and journeys, of this magnitude, we have to do it together. So thank you for this time, this opportunity, and I appreciate listening to me for what it was, however entertaining it may have been. So thank you.
Mike, this is Fiona here. Thanks so much for all your time. And I know you don't like me to use the word inspiration, but honestly, that was absolutely amazing. And we look forward to seeing you. I think Veronica and I are going to go to Visions Conference in June in Chicago. In June. So look forward to seeing you there on the panel. For anybody else who's tuning in here now, hopefully they'll come along and get to meet you in person. I really look forward to that.
I'll be there. Looking forward to that opportunity as well. So love this collaboration with FFB. Yeah. So thank you. So you all have an amazing evening, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for joining us, and thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, of course. Just a quick tidbit: if anyone asks any questions that did not get answered, I'm going to send them to Mike after we get off this call, and he'll answer them offline, and I will send you the answer.
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great evening.
Cheers.
Good night.
Thanks all.